when you start having a formal practice of sitting daily, sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 30, why is it so challenging and difficult to be with yourself and to remain still?
Well, I will speak obviously from experience and also with observing after helping many and teaching this. We can discuss quite a few things. So when you are physically still and really focusing and not moving at all, you start to highlight essentially what movement is. And movement is information in general. And we've discussed the aspects of our perspective and awareness, and information, it's a big part of it. It's the type of stimulus. So because everything it's in motion and we move and we have this type of input, when you are physically still, that is heavily reduced. Now, if you think of the conditions that are implemented when we are practicing formally, as you're saying, most of the time people also work with their eyes closed. So you are once more limiting the influx of information coming in through your experience by, one, not moving, so reducing all of that, all of the references that you have from that, and two, by removing also all of the input coming through the eyes gate, through what you see. What naturally then starts to happen is that through all of the different possibilities of what you pay attention to, some other things that might not be as obvious or relevant start to come to the surface. Okay? And there might be a different order of priority and hierarchy of this depending on us and our life story and whatever it is that we might have been ignoring or might not have been as obvious for many of us. And something that you can observe, even if it's a very romantic approach, so it's just something to consider, is if you notice the process that we go through as we age and how that has an effect in the body and also in the senses, you start to see as if everything starts to be tuned down. So our ability to move changes and it's compromised. So mobility and movability are reduced. Most of the time we are then going to be more confined into being seated all day or bedridden. And then we start also to lose the same quality in our senses. So our listening is compromised, even the eyes also, and to some extent certain mental faculties can be also affected, as if all of the focus was an invitation to shift the awareness in and then to have all of these contemplative moments, right? And that can be analogous to some of the references that you can see in certain traditions and texts, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, where they describe the dying process relative to the different elements leaving the body. So you see it's like this narrowing of input, that it's an invitation to go in a certain state of contemplation, right? It's like that breaking point for the next step to happen. In many cases, this is forced upon people, and you can see that it breaks havoc in their existence. So obviously what I'm saying just comes from my experience and how things happened in Australia, in Victoria, in the last few years, where you have to keep in mind that the restrictions we had, people were isolated in their homes for about 14 months or so. I can't even remember exactly. And for many people, actually, that was almost like an imposed solitary retreat, where obviously at first you try to manipulate the influx of information by simply binge watching series or engaging in any other type of activity through what you can consume from the internet. But that's about it. People wouldn't have the same influx of information coming in by way of the daily activities that they would involve themselves in. And we're creatures of habit. So any time that you change that, that can truly reverse the order of things. So a lot of people actually really struggle mentally because of that. because even if they were not formally practicing and doing some of these mental skill drills, they ended up having the same conditions of somebody who's formally practicing. And then the result, you could see the challenges that we had in the country when it comes to that. So essentially, by reducing those things, other areas that we are not paying attention to would come to the forefront. And there's no particular order for these things, but if you formally make the choice of practicing this, unconsciously, it's like you're trying to align things to give yourself the opportunity to establish a certain dialogue, which goes hand in hand with the journaling. So, of course, this can be very different from person to person, but it's an open invitation for you to be able to see certain things, to give the space and a platform for certain aspects of your being that have been not noticed or unheard to be seen, to be heard. And in reality, because we don't have a way to integrate this or appreciate this to begin with, for most of us at first it becomes quite challenging. Now, like anything that once more challenges the order of things, the conditions of what the norm is, what we're accustomed to, it can result in a shock. So it's not unusual when I start teaching somebody and guiding them along this process that things start to go really well when they begin, and at a certain point they come back and they say, I don't know what was happening, everything was going so well for me, but now when I sit, the mental scape is so chaotic, it's so busy and jumping from one point to the other. And in reality, you're not doing anything wrong. It's actually a confirmation of something that now you can truly see what the actual conditions are. At first you were not aware of them, so simply because you were not paying attention to those things, you couldn't see. And in many cases, it takes those conditions and that accumulation for the awareness to be shifted so you can actually notice what is truly there. So in bringing that, I think that the most important point is to acknowledge and understand that the mental skill development and what goes beyond with that, the whole integration process that comes along with that, is not an easy thing. And it's also certainly not for everyone. And those practices can actually be detrimental for many individuals. But in reality, if you have a good process, if you have guidance and understandings to these things and how to integrate that in a way that it's not disruptive of your life and your lifestyle and your conditions, it can truly be transformative.